Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Bordeaux Show. We are in the beautiful mountains of Caucasian Georgia, and we're here to answer the age-old question, who are we and where did we come from? And answer to that, I think, lies in these foothills of this mountain, because over those hills is the famous mountain of Ararat, where Noah's Ark stopped. According to that myth, according to that story that most of us Christians and Abrahamic faiths believe, is that all humanity came from Noah and his children, and of course Noah was Georgian, because first thing Noah did is make wine and get drunk. And there is nothing more Georgian than getting drunk and yelling at your kids later on. The flood myth, or as the cool kids call it, the Great Deluge, is a universal story told by almost every culture. We exist in a world where even today we are at mercy of nature. Our existence is but a blimp on the back of Mother Earth. The narrative of the flood usually goes like this. Humanity angers God or gods due to their overpopulation, disregard of nature, or their decadence. One man is chosen to build a vessel to save themselves and animals, and from him comes the next generation of humanity. This is the case with Noah from the Bible, Utnapishtu from the Gilgamesh, or Deucalion, son of Prometheus from Greek mythology. All these three examples have some connection to the Caucasus, but there are many others that aren't related to this area. So, friends, before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, let's first take a toast. Wait. This is a bull swan. Upals dideva, changagvi marjas. Glory to God. Behind me is an old school traditional mountain temple, Christian of course, where we usually come and say glory to God and pray. Now let's talk about the flood, destruction of the world, and its rebirth. Alright, according to biblical accounts, before the days of deluge, the earth was filled with different creatures, monsters, giants, and unruly folk that plunged the world into chaos. Then God decided to wipe the earth from the sin and monsters, but chose Noah, one of his last true disciples, who built a giant ark and survived the deluge 40 days and 40 nights of rain, and after which the ark, stopped over those mountains. Mount Ararat is a bit further down than just few kilometers, but go with it. There are some earth mounds that will actually be the remnants of the ark, and many have attempted to find it. But no conclusive evidence has come forth just yet. Over those mountains, few kilometers away, this is southern range of Caucasian mountains, and at the southern point of the Caucasian mountains, we have Mount Ararat. Unfortunately, our budget doesn't allow us going into Armenia and Turkey to film, but still the same mountain system. So I'm not going to go into further detail. I assume most of you know the legend of the flood and Noah and his children survived. But the first thing Noah did when he landed on Earth, start farming, of course, then made wine, and unfortunately got drunk. And that is the whole story where Ham, one of his children, found him naked and drunk, laughed at him, and told his brothers. And his brothers, Shem and Yapet, didn't look upon the naked body of their father and covered him up. Noah, finding out what happened when he was drunk, cursed sons of Ham, especially Canaan, and said that his children will suffer and toil and be slaves to his other children. I think it was a bit harsh to curse the whole bloodline, but we don't know the full context. I'm not going to go into detail, but that is the story where humanity came from. Noah's three sons, Ham, Shem, and Ismail, are the founding fathers of every quote-unquote ethnicity or race or whatever you want to refer to it of humanity. From Sham came Semites and other Asians, according to later interpretations. We must remember the historical context where the Bible was written, where known world was the Mediterranean and the Middle Eastern area, so especially Anatolian region and the central Middle East. Anatolian Caucasus was given to Iapet, and later Christian interpretations considered the rest of Europe part of Iapet's descendants, where half of the children of Iapet are actually accounted to be ancestors of Georgia, especially Ubal and Meshwesh, which is Meshwesh is Meskheti. Ubal is considered Iberia. Tubal is, of course, the original name Tubal we find in the Bible for Tubal Cain, son of Cain, who invented metalwork. Jewish people considered Iberians as famous blacksmiths. Same with Meshwesh, Meskhetians. But later Christian accounts, Georgian version of it, and Georgian and Armenian interpretation said that we are descendants of Gomer's son. Gomer is the brother of Tubal and Meshwesh. Targamos, son of Gomer, is considered to be the forefather of all Caucasian peoples, including Georgians, Armenians, and many other tribes and peoples belonging to Caucasus. And there is a further legend, non-canonical story, where grandson of Ham, the cursed line, Nimrod, became the king of this first people, the first kingdom that was built from the descendants of Noah. He decided to rebel against God, to build a giant tower, the Tower of Babel, the Tower of Babylon, and rebel against God, who caused the flood because he said that humanity was actually cursed by God and we didn't deserve it, and there's a whole different story. But in our legend, in Caucasian interpretation, Targamos and his sons, especially Kartlos and Haios or Hayuk, the Armenian founding father, they decided to rebel against this king and said that no, humanity was punished for its hubris before, and we will not participate in building of this ark. So they decided to run away and go up into the mountains to escape the tyranny of Nimrod. According to Armenian accounts, Nimrod, or Baal in this version, Baal is Canaanite god of war and later demon in Christian accounts. Before Baal was human, was Nimrod. So Nimrod and his army charged against our ancestors, and according to Armenians, their Hayuk, their founding figure, actually shot his mighty arrow and killed the king of Babylon, Nimrod, Baal, thus freeing us, all of Caucasians, from his tyranny. So in this account, Georgia, Armenia, and other Caucasian peoples are first to actually live the first state. Is it Babylon or they had another name? Who knows? And we actually didn't participate in the sin of building the Tower of Babylon. And in some accounts, people considered Kartvelian language or so many different other Caucasian languages closest related to the pre-Diluvian, pre-flood language. And that's why it's so different from any other language groups.
There's growing genetic evidence that if not all of humanity, so-called sons of Yaphet, originate from this region. Ancient genetic forefathers such as Caucasian hunter-gatherers, Anatolian farmers, European hunters, and of course Indo-Europeans all seem to originate from and around Caucasus. Debate on Indo-Euro origins is still ongoing, but mostly it's about where exactly from this area they originated, south or north of the mountains. Caucasus seems like a garden of ethno-linguistic generation. Some roll off and start a new nation. Later, as that nation gets buried by the sands of time, only remnants will be a tiny village somewhere in these hills.
Of course, the flood myth is one of the most universal tales that humanity has ever told itself, which kind of leads me to believe that if everyone tells about one thing, it might be at least somewhat true. Further archaeological research is slowly going around to the idea that flood may have actually happened.
There have been many natural disasters that happened within humanity's existence. Some consider the end of the Ice Age and resulting flooding from the melted ice to be the original point. Some consider asteroid impact that caused ancient Great Tsunami, or the natural floodings caused by the river overflow such as Nile in Africa, Tigris and Euphrates River in Middle East, or Yellow River in China. The fact is, humanity always preferred living next to bodies of water for food, drink, and travel, but water is very unpredictable. My preferred hypothesis is the Black Sea deluge theory, where once Black Sea was a smaller freshwater lake, same with Caspian Lake, but Mediterranean Sea rose up and burst through the Bosporus Strait, filling the freshwater lake with salt water, killing all the freshwater fish and drowning most of the shore in mere days. This must have been apocalyptic to humans who must have definitely resided there. To this day, Black Sea is lifeless at the bottom levels due to all the decay poison in the bottom of the sea. All I can say is that it needs more research to be conclusive.
But I also wanted to tell a Georgian version of flood myth that you might be and not be familiar with. At least you might be familiar with the characters if you're into studying Indo-European, Proto-Indo-European mythology. Manuka and Januka are the main characters. Manuka, of course, might be familiar to you as Manu, brother to Yaman, which is Proto-Indo-European twin founding figures, which there is a story of reconstructed myth about Manu and Yamanu and their sacrifice. But I think this is the reason why people should research Caucasian mythology more, because we have far more detailed version of Manuka and Januka, Manu and Yamanu legend here, which also relates to the flood. All right, what's the legend? Oh, once upon a time, there were two twin brothers, Manuka and Januka. They were blacksmiths and they had cattle, and their prized possession was the land bull. This land bull often would come home bloodied and tired. The brothers were confused. Why is our bull coming home to our house bloodied, tired, and without energy? So one day they followed their bull and they saw how it went up into the mountains, going into a mountain lake. And at the mountain lake, this bull screamed and moo on top of his lungs. A few moments later, from the lake came out a sea bull. In some version, it is just a sea bull. In others, it is the Veshab, the Leviathan, the sea kraken, the sea monster. And those two creatures, the land bull and the sea bull, did battle. But our bull, the land bull, didn't have tough enough horns to pierce through the scales of the sea bull, the Veshap. So, again, our bull went home bloodied and tired. The blacksmith brothers decided to forge magical horns with diamond tips so it could finally pierce through the scale of this terrible beast. Next day, the bull again went to the top of the mountain, went to the mountain lake, screamed, the bull of the sea came out, and they did battle again. But now the horns were tough enough to pierce through the scales, and the sea bull, the Veshapi, screamed in pain, wallowed, and finally it ran out back into the lake. But the lake then ran red, covering the surface of the lake blood red. There are different variations of the story. In one variation, a old hag has a vision that this lake would one day burst and warns the village. But the village doesn't believe her. In some versions, the Leviathan owns the sea bull. In the other versions, sea bull is the Leviathan, is the Veshap, is the sea dragon. So, after the dragon gets wounded and the lake gets covered in blood, the Leviathan runs out of the sea, trampling through the trees and carving through a path through the river and goes into the great ocean. But few days or few years later, the lake bubbles up, bursts up, and flows down from the mountain, covering the world with water, at least the village of it, and the village that Manuka and Januka resided in, it floods. Then the brothers decided to sacrifice their bull to appease the god, return humanity to its normal state. There are different versions of it again. In one of the versions, everyone dies except a manger where a baby resides, and from that baby, new humanity comes forth. There are different variations of the story. Each village and each nation has its own interpretation of it. But this is the longest version I could find. The lake Leviathan, the Veshapi, is of course connected with Caucasian mythology, where menhirs, not a menhir, this is old Soviet kami block, but this type of giant monolith, the ancient stone constructions, was dedicated to the lake spirit, the lake dragon, who humanity used to sacrifice to. You've heard of probably Saint George and the dragon, where the princess was sacrificed to the dragon. This is the narrative where when rain didn't come and when water was lacking, people used to sacrifice to the monolith. So the lake dragon would give nourishment, water, rain, and fertility. So it's also connected to fertility. To this day, some villagers go and sacrifice to the menhir, to the phallic pillar, to ask for more fertility and better milk production. One of the stones, one of the famous stones, is called Dzudzuskwa, the breast stone, which provides women who sacrifice to it better milk yield.
From the story of Manuka and Januka, we can make many parallels. First thing that jumps to mind is the battle between Earth Bull and Sea Bull, or as it's known in Hebrew legends, Behemoth and the Leviathan. According to Jewish apocalyptic tale, at the end of the world, Leviathan and the Behemoth will do battle. Then God shall slay both and make shelter for the survivors of the end times. Another parallel with Manuka or Manu in Hindu flood myth, where a man saves a small fish from other fish bullying it, raises it in a pond, and after it grows, he sends it back into the sea. The fish apparently is the avatar of Vishnu, who thanks the man and warns him of the upcoming flood. So he builds a ship that fish guides it to safety up in the northern Himalayan mountains. In some versions, fish also battles a horse-faced demon. We also make parallels with Zoroastrian story of the flood, where evil Ahriman causes a devastating drought, and Mithras causes a massive flood to stop it. But only one man and his cattle survived in the ark. One other Mazdian legend that might not be considered flood myth but has many similarities is the legend of Yama and Vara, where Yama, an ancient near immortal king of the world who once was a shepherd boy, is tasked to build a underground safe house 3 kilometers deep and 3 kilometers wide to house humanity's best and brightest in the hopes of surviving a terrible frost winds and later result in ice melting. It's like something out of a post-apocalyptic sci-fi story. The underground kingdom has magic mirrors, artificial lights, and everything for a civilization to thrive for centuries. Curiously, there are many later accounts of underground kingdoms both in Himalayas and in Caucasus, inhabited by advanced races. Topic for another video. I'll cover this and many other Zoroastrian and later Shahnameh stories in future with much more detail. Some consider Yama cognate to Ymir from Norse mythology, a primordial frost giant that is killed to create the world. But his blood causes a massive flood, killing off most of Titans but 2. This is similar to biblical account of Anak, the last surviving Nephilim who stood on top of the mountains to not get drowned. Later Christianized Georgian mythology considers giant race of Devi to Anak and his descendants. Yama, Ymir means twin in Proto-Indo-European language. This takes us back to Manuka and Januka, or Manu Yamanu, man and his twin. Man has to sacrifice his twin to create the world or survive the deluge. This is a complex story spanning beyond just Indo-European world, so we must try to study it holistically.
Thank you all for watching. I hope I showcased how interesting and significant Caucasus and this whole area is to humanity's history. And I hope you get more interested into it. This area needs far more research, far more study, both genetic, archaeological, cultural, mythological, what I'm trying to do here. And I'm just one person who isn't qualified to do any of it. If you're interested in what I'm doing, please like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. Please ask me any question you want in the comments. Then I'll try to respond and then make a video. Who knows? And thank you to all my Patreons. If you like to support me and help me make better and greater videos, join my Patreon on my Support Me on Coffee, or you can just stick around and watch my videos. That helps a lot too. Tell your friends. And thank you all, new and old. My video started blowing up and I'm really happy about it. Years of torment and work finally paying off. Thank you all. And more and greater videos to come. Take care. Bye bye.